program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
And on a gloomy and cloudy morning here in the African wilderness, all sorts of exciting things await us. This is Safari Live.
Ready. Standing by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live. And a very good morning to all of you, and welcome on the Sunrise Safari. Although, as I mentioned, I'm not sure there's going to be a particularly spectacular sunrise in this particular morning, as it is somewhat dark and gloomy. But if you are joining us for the first time, my name is Jamie. This morning I have Liam on camera with me, and we are heading out into Djuma Private Game Reserve, which is in the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa. So right up in the top northeastern corner of a very, very beautiful country. And all sorts of exciting things await. And because you're on a live safari, it means that you can ask questions whenever you want to, and you can do that or pass on your comments on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@WildEarthTV. And we are on our way to where the Nkuhuma pride of lions killed 2 buffalo, and there they are ahead of us. Now, I'm actually going to do this now before we get too much closer to them. I don't know what we're going to find this morning. Obviously, we've just found lions lying up with very, very full bellies. But for those of you who perhaps have missed a couple of the live safaris, there is something wrong with our Nkuhuma pride. And we've lost at least 4 cubs. I'm hoping that we're going to arrive to happy, joyful, energetic lions. But I honestly just don't know. And we're going to go forward a little bit, but if you are sensitive, I suggest maybe just be aware that we might be arriving to some sad scenes. I'm hoping it's not going to be the case. I've been avoiding the Nkuhumas a little bit. It's amazing how attached we have become to them. And we're going to discuss in a little bit more depth in a moment, once we get a little bit closer, exactly what is happening with them. Hello, girls and boys, maybe. Okay, that's good. Oh, whoopsie daisies. Hello, boy. Sorry, I didn't see you there, Nkuhuma. One massive Birmingham boy looking over in a stately manner across at the rest of the pride. And they're feeding on the buffalo. One lioness is now standing up. Let's see what we have here. So to give you an update on the situation with the Nkuhumas, of course, we were struck by the mystery as to why all of the cubs or some of the cubs were starting to show a great deal of weakness in their back legs and ultimately ended up paralyzed. Now, preliminary results, and this is an update that we received last night, preliminary results from the autopsy done on one of the cubs is that it is in fact white muscle disease. That seems to be relatively confirmed. I know that the Sabi Sand will be releasing an official statement in the not too distant future, but it seems to be that their suspicions, what was originally a theory, is now confirmed. And there's very, very little evidence in literature, literature on this particular type of disease in lions, especially in wild lions. It is known as nutritional muscular dystrophy. So essentially what it is mainly a shortage of vitamin E and selenium as well, and it seems to cause exceptional weakness in particularly the back muscles and the back leg muscles of the animals. Now, what was tremendously concerning for me, and I have to say I woke up at 1 o'clock this morning and lay awake until about 3, and then had to get up 45 minutes later. But I lay awake from about 1 o'clock in the morning puzzling over this particular mystery. We are asking for more information. We're trying to find out as much as we can about what exactly is going on with the lions. But what was particularly concerning yesterday was with Tayla. One of the adult lionesses started to show what looked to me like the same symptoms. Now, it could have been that it was an injury from the buffalo hunt. We can't necessarily jump to the conclusion, and it's very difficult to speculate, and we should try and stay away from speculation. But it looked to me that she was struggling with that exact thing. But so far, all 4 cubs from yesterday are present, 2 of them feeding quite happily away on their buffalo. The Nkuhumas, despite their trials at the moment, have already shown themselves to be more than capable of hunting. This is actually their 2nd buffalo kill. They made 2 of them about a day and a half ago. They look okay, little ones. Still eating, still feeding, ears back, growling a little bit, so they're still very spirited. I can just hear the little growls. No, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a 5th cub. Here we go, cub number 5. Well, that already is a very positive thing. And there's definitely the 2 cubs at the back, and the 5th one's just come in and started feeding. My goodness, look at the bellies on those cubs. They are so full. Little one attempting to suckle from mom. You can see it working its paws at the tummy. Okay, so that's really positive. We've got 5 cubs, not 4, as originally expected. That is happy news. And of course, it's entirely possible that they will come through this and that they will recover. We just don't know at this point. I'm hopeful, though. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all 5 lionesses are here as well. So we've got the 1 lioness over there feeding with the 2 cubs. We've got 2 lionesses lying in the middle of the road and another 2 lying off over there to the right. So it must mean that Amber Eyes and the young female have rejoined the rest of the pride. That's good news. The Nkuhuma's back together once again. Little cubs curiously watching the passage of vultures. Well, cub displaced. Determined not to be outdone. Little female. No, little male cub. All cubs standing now. Phew. That's a relief. And it is a relief to see... Oh! Nothing like starting your morning with a kick to a face. Making little begging sounds. And it's interesting. Yes, little one. Listen to the sounds it's making. Begging mom to lie back down so that it can continue suckling. And that, of course, has been one of the big explanations behind why the cubs have been in the condition that they've been in, is that the mothers just aren't getting the nutrients, despite the fact that they're eating well, or at least they're eating lots. They've had lots and lots of buffalo kills over the last few months. They just aren't getting, the buffalo aren't getting the vitamins they need, and therefore the lionesses aren't. And they're not producing the milk that they should be. Covering up the stomach contents of that buffalo kill. I'm going to sit and watch our wonderful lion pride and see how they're all doing. I mentioned at the start of the sunrise safari that we have all sorts of exciting things planned, and I think that James is out and about. Let's go and see if he has something to show you.
Hooray, everybody. We've come to where the leopards were yesterday. Karula, the great queen, and her 2 cubs. And look, just beyond them, eating totally peacefully next to the predators, a herd of elephants. Isn't that fantastic? My name is James Henry. On camera today is Jean-Andre Bulhazia Brain Gerding. It's good to have him back on the vehicle with us. Please do talk to us. # Safari Live. Questions at WildEarthTV are the best ways to get hold of us during the course of the next 3 hours. Let's go back to this cat and her new friends. Isn't this fantastic? Now, I don't know, Jean-André says that the duiker that was killed... Oh, okay, I can see it. It's being eaten. Thanks, Louise. Yes, I'm with them. I'm well aware. In the tree, the leopard is with the duiker. There's another little leopard up there. This is just fantastic. Everyone, you don't see this. Elephants hate being around predators normally. They chase wild dogs, they chase lions especially, they chase hyenas. And there's no way, I cannot believe they haven't seen the leopards. Looks like little shongile in the tree. One of them is now stalking the elephants. I'm going to move slightly. The signal is not great here, everybody. So if we do lose signal, I'm sure it'll stabilize as we get a little bit closer. Just want to move very slowly because it's so nice having the elephants here also completely relaxed. There's a tiny little baby elephant here. And the leopard that we first saw has just gone round the left-hand side of your picture. What a start. And here, Jean-André, I'm not sure you're going to be able to pick her up. It could be Shongile, at least Hosana. Just off to the right-hand side, behind those elephants, comes another leopard. He'll probably pop out where I'm pointing now. There he comes. I'm sure that's him. He's I think he's probably pretend stalking the elephants. Now this is why a young male leopard is the best fun. They love doing this sort of thing. And there seems to be a really peacefully interesting understanding between the leopards are not creating any issues. Hosana there is just having a little bit of fun, which is exactly what young male leopards do. I've seen them stalking rhino quite often. How cool is this? And William, goes just along the lines. There is definitely a peace here. Nobody is in any kind of conflict. You say, are leopards not a threat to elephants in the same way that lions are? No, absolutely not, William. They are much, much smaller, of course. Karula probably weighs in at about 45 to 50 kilograms, if she's lucky. I'll just move the car quickly. That's about 90 to 100 pounds. And a lioness, remember, is at about 250 pounds. 120 kilograms, up to 150 kilograms. So really they are vastly, vastly different sizes. And that means that the lions are potentially a threat to especially young elephants. Ease our way in here. Try not to create too much noise, especially if those elephants are going to hang around. There we are. Watch your head, Jean-André. It's a wonderful view here. I just hope the signal maintains. You right there, Jean-André? Hosana is now stalking the elephant. He thinks he's very big and tough now. And look at his little tail flicking just like his mum's does. As soon as I call anywhere near him, the little surrender flick goes up. Now this is a particularly cheerful way, of course, to have a cat sighting and just before we go back to Jamie, just remember that could possibly be a rather difficult time there. And we, of course, are more than happy to answer any of your questions regarding what's going on there, as far as we can understand what's happening. Now, let's move forward here. Just roll into the drainage. Hit a small gardenia plant. Longendry.
Oopsie daisy, sorry about that, everybody. It seems as though James lost signal. As you know, bringing you live safaris from the middle of the African bush, sometimes every now and again things go a little bit wrong. There we go. We are still with our lions. We had to take a brief break to go and just sort something out with our antenna, and I might in a moment have to play hopscotch with Aubrey, who is arriving with his guests. And basically what I mean by that, for those of you that are new, is that there are lodges in this area, and they do come and enjoy these magical sightings with us. So Aubrey is one of the guides from Djuma, and he is on his way. I can hear him trundling up behind me. And let me just see whether or not he can actually see, and his guests can actually see, or if he wants to squeeze past. Morning! Oh, no, he seems fine. Taking a slightly different approach. So Mfumo, lying up with a very full belly. I noticed earlier, briefly, when he had his head up, that his face is looking 10 times better. And that is just an example of how incredibly resilient their immune systems are. And that's what astounds me, is that something so small as a vitamin deficiency can cause such drastic symptoms, and yet when they have injuries like Mfumo had with a massive hole in his face, he managed to heal up and look absolutely fine in a matter of months. And it was a really nasty injury. It was a nasty infection that he had. We don't know exactly how he got that injury, but he seems absolutely fine now. Hello, girls. They're all flopping down, exhausted, and that could just be because they have enormous bellies. Pat in Washington, very good question from you, and I think it's something that we've all been thinking about, and that is if the... Sorry, just waving hello to Rexon and co. You're wondering if Amber Eyes and the young female fall pregnant and if they have cubs, will their cubs have a better chance because they have the buffalo? It's rained, so the buffalo will have more nutrition, and as a result the food will be better, the milk will be better, and so on. Will they have a better chance of survival? Yes, quite possibly. That seems really likely. Hello, girl. Sorry, I just want to watch her walk for a little bit. We are reporting back on all of these sightings, straight back to those people who are in charge and the managers of this area. Oh, goodness. That belly. So incredibly full. This is a completely unexpected side effect of the drought, and it is entirely due to the drought. So yes, I think that probably Amber Eyes and the young female, if they did have cubs, I think that their cubs would have a better chance of survival. But the fact that we have 5 here and not 4, as far as I know yesterday, Lou, correct me if I'm wrong, although I was in final control for the entirety of that drive, but as far as I know there were only 4 yesterday that were seen. It's a really very good sign that we've actually got 5, because it could actually mean that one cub that didn't make it to the sighting yesterday is actually doing a little bit better. Remember how the female went off to call cubs? Yeah, I thought so. Louise just confirming that there were only 4 cubs yesterday. It's a very good thing. means that the cub that she was trying to call made it here. Hello, girl. At least they're managing to get food. Is that not the female that we saw yesterday? The one that went to go and fetch her cub and was calling. She was the one. Let's see if she's got that injury on her back. I can't see from this angle. So yes, the cubs in future will have a better chance. One of the big things that we've been discussing amongst us as guides, because obviously this is, for all of us, this is the first time we've ever seen this. So for all of us, it is a complete mystery, and we know very little about it apart from what we've researched on and what we've learned over the last few days. But what's interesting to me is that none of the other, as far as we know, we're still trying to find out, but as far as we know, none of the other lions in the Sabi Sand are showing the same symptoms. Lions have been recorded with it at exactly the same time in a place called Imbabat, but that's quite a long way away from here, and it's a mystery to me as to why it is that it's specific to the Nkuhumas. My only conclusion, and James and I were talking about it this morning, our conclusion is that it's with the drought and the quality of the soil in this particular area. Obviously, the plants are not carrying the normal nutrients that they would have in a normal rainy season. But in other areas where the soil types are slightly different, the grasses are of a slightly better quality, and the buffalo therefore are doing slightly better. If they might still be looking thin in the same way our buffalo are, but they might just have that extra degree of vitamin E. Massive paw. And Cindy, in North Carolina, you wanted a little bit more of an in-depth explanation into diseases that are brought on during the drought, whereas, or in contrast to diseases that might occur during very, very wet seasons. So Cindy, in terms of dry season, it's funny that you should ask this, because I was just reading up an article about lions with massive vitamin deficiencies, and a combination of vitamin deficiencies, and what was it called? It'll come back to me. Sorry, Cindy, I'll come back to that in a moment. So in terms of drought, mange is, of course, one of the big ones that we've been seeing. And it's not just the lions that have been afflicted with mange. It's the impala, the inyala. It is carried by a mite that is particularly prevalent during dry conditions and during drought conditions. As soon as it starts to rain properly, it starts to wash away the mite and the skin conditions, and the animals immediately start to recover, which I think is one of the big reasons why the Nkuhumas, who did contract mange, managed to handle it in a much more resilient way than the Styx cubs, for example, just because they just got lucky. They might also have had slightly better genetics in terms of dealing with it. Anthrax is another big one during dry season. Generally, diseases tend to spread more during dry season than they do in wet season, just because of the amount of rotting carcasses, the amount of, I hate to say it, but death that we see during times like these. I mean, nature's very, very efficient in terms of cleaning up after herself, but we've seen, like with that dead buffalo at Buffelshoek, that at the moment the scavengers are just, well, they're essentially spoiled for choice. Anthrax, rabies tends to be another big one, that you get the outbreaks more during, for some reason, during the dry season than during the wet season. And anthrax, as I said earlier. Then, I read an article yesterday about the perfect storm, as it was described by researchers, of the spread of a disease in Kenya that was after a bad dry season and then conversely very, very heavy rain. And I'm just trying to remember, it was a combination of a nutritional deficiency combined with a type of tick, and I'm just trying to remember the type of tick. Babesiosis, it was something like that. Definitely begins with a B. And it's carried by ticks, and it's a parasite that transmit disease, and it might be something that those of you might even be more familiar with. Those of you in the northern hemisphere that have learned a bit more about Lyme disease, apparently the two are quite closely connected. So it's something that you will get in the States and in the North Americas, and it's an infection by a type of parasite called Babesia. Babesia, that's it. So that's something that in the article they actually said was basically spread due to a combination of drought, which created the nutritional deficiency, and then the spread of this parasite during heavy rainy season. And often ticks are more prevalent in rainy seasons as well. So those are the major diseases that I can think of. Canine distemper, which is something that we were initially concerned about, which was why we were desperate to get these cubs checked out by a vet, because canine distemper, of course, could have been brought in through an external human source, essentially an anthropogenic cause. Now that's been ruled out since, but canine distemper spreads at any time. It just depends. You get various outbreaks at various times of the year. It's a virus. It's carried. Those of you with dogs will know all about it. You'll know that you have to vaccinate your dogs, and it's something that is usually introduced by things like feral dogs or feral cats moving into an area. And despite the name canine distemper, it is able to affect wild cats, wild big cats, and lions in particular seem to get infected with it. The biggest problem with lions, of course, is that they're social in nature. So if it had been a disease like canine distemper, our biggest concern was how fast it was going to spread. And that was a very big concern, particularly because, of course, the Birmingham boys will be a vector of any kind of virus that moves through pride. So whilst if it were just the Nkuhumas, they would, it might remain centered just to them. With the Birmingham boys moving between lines, it could have spread to all of the different prides of this area. Luckily, that's not what we're dealing with now. And while our lions snooze away, I'm going to stay a little bit longer I want to just confirm exactly what's happening with the adults of this pride. But while our lions snooze away, Tayla is out on foot. Let's go and find out what her plans are.
Now, good morning to all of you. Apologies for my delay, but finally the sun has come out and provided enough light for us to walk. Now, of course, my name is Tayla, and on camera with me this morning we've got David, and of course Herbert is out keeping us safe. And I found a couple of things already to show you. Have a look what's on this branch. Now, look at what we've got over here. Is it fine, David? Yeah. No, it's on a branch, and, well, I'm bumping the tree a little bit, so it's moving. Now, I'm sure at first glance you have a look at these things and you probably know exactly what they are. But if you don't, these are adult ant lions. Isn't that incredible? Now, very easy to tell the difference between a dragonfly, because firstly, you can see the way that they've perched themselves upon this branch. They've got their wings closed. Now, dragonflies will typically sit with their wings facing out, sort of horizontally, aligned with their body. And then, David, can you see their antenna quite nicely? And you can see very, very thick antenna compared to a dragonfly. See how they've got little clubs on the end of them? That's also another way that you can tell that it is an antlion. Now, if you have never seen an antlion before, we'll have to try and find you one. But that'll... earthquake for these poor little antlions. I'm going to stand up now. But what we're going to do at some point, I'm going to try and find an antlion pit as well, and look at the larval stage and see if we can find it. But there's quite a few little insects around here this morning. It's actually beautiful. A little bit chilly still. I didn't think we were going to see anything just yet. Let's see, David. Nothing here. Let's take a walk around to the next tree. Maybe we'll find something else. I know Herbie said he had a caterpillar up ahead, so we'll go and have a look at the caterpillar. Ah, okay. Have a look at this, David. Check if there's anything else. Look at this little beetle. Now, it's going to be quite difficult. I'm going to try and lurk behind the trees over here. Isn't that incredible? Beautiful red with those black spots on it. Now, I've seen a beetle of a similar sort of shape, not necessarily coloration. And it was one that James has showed you, and I think Steph has shown you as well. The one that I'm talking about has got yellow and black stripes on it. To be exact, 3 black stripes going back down its carapace. And I wonder if it is not in the same family perhaps as the jewel beetle, which is what the other one belongs to. My only concern though is it's not as shiny as what a jewel beetle should be. However, it's got the big, I'm just going to come around and have a look again myself. You can see it's got quite large eyes on the front of its face. And that's very typical of jewel beetles. Now, there are thousands and thousands of different species of beetles in the Coleoptera family, let alone each individual species. And unfortunately, I don't think we know all the different things that are out there. I think we've still got a lot to learn. But we'll leave this little beetle and I'll have to have a look and see what it was. So if you did manage to get a screenshot, well, that'd be fantastic if you could share it. You can hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you can send it to us, questions@WildEarth.tv. Right, David, let's find this caterpillar. Now, it's a lovely morning out here. It seems as though the clouds are burning away. Where did Herbie see it? Now, Herbert's got the most... there it is. Haha. I just spotted its little feet. Come and have a look here, David. Oh, there's quite a few things for you for us to have a look at. Now, shame, David, you're probably going to have to get nice and low now. And of course you can see my finger that I cut yesterday. Look at that. And it's a caterpillar that we have been seeing. We've actually had a look at this particular species underneath the microscope in the tent. And I believe this is exactly the same species of caterpillar that I had one day in the lion sighting, quite close to the Djuma pan. And the same one that flung and crawled up my neck just as the show ended. Now, I had a look and I asked a couple of people, seeing as none of my books unfortunately had this species of larvae in it, and they said it was one of the Leopard butterflies. However, this gentleman that helped me ID it, he was IDing it from a sort of international perspective. Now, this is a South African version of it, but he says it's very, very typical, the way that little face, can you see his little face there? Those little dark patches of eyes and all the hair coming off to the side of his face. I can hear a lion in the distance. But it sounds like a contact call. Sounds a bit far away. Anyway, now I still haven't worked out what this thing eats because I've seen it on a red spike thorn before. It's now on a cluster leaf, and I've also seen it on a boorbean. And if you remember the last sighting I had of this particular caterpillar, it was also on a buffalo thorn. So, well, we're not sure what that is. And we're going to carry on now. Now, because it's such a nice morning and there's not a bit of wind, I'm going to have to use my little ash thingy. I don't know what you call this, a little eye drop bottle that I put ash in that we'll use to try and see which way the wind is blowing. Should we see if it works, David? Seeing as though, I don't know. Oh, it's very fine. See that? Right, that's good. We've got the wind in our favor. Now we're going to keep going, but I'm going to send you back across with James to have a look at the leopards.
Now we're just adjusting one or two things, everybody. That obviously is not a leopard at all. It is an elephant. And the leopards and the elephants are still in a very easy piece here. Unfortunately, there really is not a great deal of signal here, so we've had to position in a place where we can see them. There is Hoshana, who has been chasing the elephants. Well, not chasing them, he's been giving them a little bit of a rough time. He's now asleep. He's exhausted after his early morning elephant stalk. And then, I don't know if we'll be able to see her, but just over there is the queen. That's very nice. You can see we're up on the bank. We were right down there with her earlier on when you lost us. And she's been eating a piece of kill. And she might actually go up the tree now and see if she can get a bit more from her daughter, who is very hungrily eating some breakfast. Now, for those of you who missed yesterday afternoon's drive, there is a duiker kill in here. And she killed it probably around, I don't know, maybe lunchtime yesterday. It was quite a cool and blustery day, and so very good hunting conditions for any of the big cats. And she's now looking up, ruefully wondering how long it will be before her children stop eating everything that she catches. I often wonder, and we've been talking about this a lot of late, whether or not there is an element of her missing them when they leave home, or if she's just quite happy when they move on and look after themselves. Now, she is 12 years old, of course, as many of you will know. Some of you might be new viewers and you don't know that this leopardess is a 12-year-old. And Lebec, you're wondering how long they can live. Lebec, they probably live in this area to an average of about 15 years or so. Her mother, interestingly, apparently lived to 18, and I've known one other 17-year-old leopard in this area. So potentially to 18, she's got good long-living genes, does Karula. But whether or not she will make it to that age, I don't know. I think it's very nice of her to do what she's doing behind the bush, don't you, Jeandre? She's just relieving herself, everybody, and that means that we don't have to look at it. Tingana, the other day, during our live TV show, he moved at the end of the drive, and, well, good grief. The last thing he did on television was to make an enormous deposit on camera. It was very un-leopard-like. And there she has melted into the bushes. We'll just try and get you a shot of Shongile in the tree. Can you see her there, Jeandre? Sort of. I'll try and move you. Let's just have a look and see what your picture's like. Oh, I think we can probably get a better picture than that. I'll just move slightly to the right-hand side. Is that any better? Fantastic, isn't it, Jeandre? That's probably the best we're going to get for now. And we were talking about those emotions, and we're going to be doing that as we watch the fairly harrowing story of the white mussel disease unfold with the Nkuhuma pride. And Tracy, you want to know if I think leopards have feelings. We've discussed this enormously over the last little while, and I think it is an interesting one. I think let's just have, while I talk about it, you can look at little Hosanna over here, who's now in very plain view. Tracy, I don't know. I mean, my current thinking is that animals certainly have feelings. To what extent they're the same as ours is very difficult to say. But remember that traditionally, of course, you know, as a scientist, you're always taught that animals do not express emotions, and it's just patently obvious to anybody who's ever owned a domestic cat, dog, horse, rabbit, or budgerigar that animals very clearly do feel emotions. We know that they feel sad and they feel distressed. We know especially, I mean, I remember the first time I noticed it when we had two dogs at home, one a Labrador and the other something called a Border Terrier, which had the worst breath of any animal in history, and he became completely depressed when the old Labrador died. She died of old age, and there was no question that his character changed completely when she died, and I don't believe it was anything short of depression. Now, if you think that a domestic cat or domestic dog can be like that, I see absolutely no reason why a large-brained wild cat like this wouldn't feel some sense of emotion as well. Now, one of the reasons, there's a whole lot of movement going on now. There's Karula bringing some kill, maybe to share with Hosanna, probably not. He's going down to see if he can get some. The reason, if you want to still be scientific about it, which is tends to be where I go, why on earth would there be, what evolutionary advantage could there be to having feelings? And the answer is, of course, that if there was no feeling, if there was no sense of emotion that Karula felt for her babies, well, then there would be no kind of reason for her to look after them and try and make sure that they were okay. Now that, of course, would be disastrous for her survival. It would be disastrous for the survival of the species. And so I think there's a real evolutionary advantage there for them having emotions and feelings. And I think that absolutely does happen. So, yeah, in short, Tracy, I think animals absolutely do have feelings. How far they go to being like ours, I don't know. But, of course, there's no way for us to understand what they're feeling short of imposing or anthropomorphizing our own emotions onto the animals. But it's a lovely discussion, and I really think it's interesting to try and unpack what's going on. And, of course, remember with the human being, Tracy, oh, sorry, I'm just trying to turn the radio down. Look at those bracket funguses. With the human being, of course, we interpret our own feelings from the signs of our voices, the sounds of our voices, the look of our faces, our body language, and we're attuned to doing that. Now, of course, when you're looking at a different species with a face that isn't nearly as expressive, doesn't have the musculature to be as expressive, it's very difficult to interpret what's going on. So not the best leopard view we've ever had, but it is possibly the best bracket fungus view we've ever had, don't you think? Isn't that beautiful? There's just life all over the place at the moment. James, you're wondering... You're wondering if I think Karula had to rehoist the bush, not the bush, this is a bush, rehoist the kill yesterday because Hosana looked like he was going to drop it out. I don't know. I've got absolutely no idea. I think it's possible. But certainly a lot of it seems to have been dropped on the ground. That's what she's eating. And he looks like he's trying to get a piece of that action now. We're sitting under a tambuti tree, everybody, which ordinarily is very attractive. Right now it's deeply irritating because every time I turn my head it catches the top of my hat. And that makes me very cross, Chandway. Right, Tayla is out and about on foot, which is marvellous indeed. So let's go and find out what small magnificence she has managed to find for you this time.
Now remember I said to you after we found those adult ant lions that I was going to try and find you a conical pit that their larvae makes. Now I have found one indeed. You're going to have to look very carefully down here. Let's get a small piece of twig. Now you can see this beautiful little pit that we're looking at. Now inside there, I'm not sure, I'm going to try. I don't know if there is a little larvae inside here, but let's have a look. But you can see there's actually even a couple of little ants walking around. And what that's designed to do is an ant comes trundling along here, la 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 la, just having a good day, perhaps looking for some food, you know, minding its own business. It will fall into this little sand pit, and you can see it doesn't take much, just touching it, and you can see how the sand actually caves away. Now sadly it doesn't look like there's actually a little ant lion inside there, but they will wait in the middle underneath some sand, concealing themselves and keeping themselves out of the hot sun, and wait for something to land in the middle of the pit. It'll then reach out, grab the ant and put it back in. Now I don't think it's a very active area. Typically they have more than one pit, but we'll see if we can find some more and maybe even have a look. Maybe we can have a look at their tracks. We're going to just keep moving though. Apparently this is not the greatest spot, but I've got a stick to fight off the gremlins today. It's more like a sword, I suppose, rather than the big sticks that I usually like to pick up and, well, swing around. But we'll carry on along this game path. Now my plan is to head towards Leopard this morning. That's where I'd really like to head off to and go and have a look at a couple of flowers that I've seen growing around there. Maybe we even see our friend the hippo. Let's carry on though. Shame, David, you're walking. Sending David to a trail of trees. There's quite a lot of these silver cluster leaves coming up. Have you noticed that, David? Now, you all know those cluster leaves quite well, of course. They need no introduction. And they're normally an indication... Sorry, I've just heard some birds alarming. Sounds like it's coming from down there a wee bit away, so we won't worry too much. Now, this is normally an indication of a seep line, all these lovely plants. And you typically find them along drainage lines. And it seems as though there's quite a few ants. Have a look here. Look at all these little ants. I don't know what they're feeding on. You see that, David? Bit difficult. Walking around. Again, going out, looking for something to feed on. Maybe they're feeding from a sap that perhaps is being released by this tree. Often what happens is that there's a couple of species of ants, and particularly the cocktail ants, I'm just going to let go of the branch there, that will utilize trees, especially that do release a lot of sap, for instance like the acacias. And I haven't seen any just here yet. I haven't found any cocktail ants that like to utilize the acacia trees. What they'll do, let's see if we've got an acacia anywhere nearby. Here's one. It's not the greatest one though, but we'll have a look at it anyway. Show you the thorns. But I'm stuck, David.
Oh,
I'm being attacked. Get off me, buffalo thorn. Okay, let's have a look here. Now this isn't the greatest species because it hasn't got the biggest horns. Horns, not horns, thorns. I'm going on holiday today, so my brain is not working. And you can see, even though they're massive horns, they're very easy to bend. You see that? They're quite flexible. Very flexible. Let me go to these ones rather. And they're hollow inside. And what the ant will do is it'll actually make its home inside of the thorn. And it will move around and provide protection from the plant. So anything that eats the plant's leaves, like little aphids or beetles or caterpillar larvae, they'll chase them away. And in return, well, the tree says thank you very much and provides a beautiful amber sap for them to feed on. And it's quite nice. Most of the sap from the various acacia species. My favorite one, sorry, Herbert's just given me a signal. I think he's seen something. Okay, he says let's get moving. I don't know what he's seen, but we'll follow Herbert. Herbert knows best. Let's sneak up towards him. I'm not going to say too much now. I'll finish my ant story. David, we're just going to creep through here. I don't think it's anything big and dangerous. I think Herbie has found us something little. Did you find us something little, Herbie? See, the big things stand out and are easier to find. And it seems as though whatever Herbert had seen, the little object or little creature, has now given him the slip and completely disappeared. How did that happen, Herbie? Was it something particular to this buffalo thorn, I wonder? Well, we'll try and find it again. But what I did want to tell you about the sap from the acacia tree, it was one of my favorite things to feed on. When I was in the Eastern Cape, I'd often go make a little incision on an acacia tree and then actually wait for the sap to ooze out, leave it for a couple of days. I'd come back, take it, little amber, little teardrop, put it in my mouth and chew it. Lovely and sweet, really good if you're feeling a bit under the weather and you need an electrolyte boost, I suppose, or a sugar boost. Really good to eat that. And you can see why the ants, of course, favor the acacia trees. But enough about that. Let's jump on to the back of Jamie's vehicle and have a look and see how the Nkuhumas are doing.
We are still with our Nkuhuma pride. Now, it seems as though James's signal is not particularly strong at Karula, so once we're finished here, we're actually going to do a swap around, and myself and VM will make our way towards Karula, and James will come and sit with the lions. Now, one of the big reasons that, of course, I mentioned earlier that I wanted to sit with these lions is to try and watch the way that the females, the adults, are moving. And the one female from yesterday did get up and move into some very thick bushes over there in front of us. She was moving with great, great difficulty. It was a struggle for her to get to that particular position. She isn't comfortable at all. Now, the difficulty, of course, with this female is that she has that injury on the back, just above her tail, right in the middle of her spine. And that probably came from an injury that she got while she was hunting. It's an old-ish injury. We've seen it before. But it's impossible for us to tell at the moment whether or not it's the injury causing that difficulty in her back legs, or if it's the same thing that has affected the cubs. So that's what we're trying to figure out now, just by watching her behavior, by trying to see the way all of the adult females are moving. She really is struggling. It could be an infection that's pressing down on her spinal column. And the one cub, the smallest cub, this one, is also not walking particularly well. It's here, it's with the rest of the group, but it is showing the same symptoms. Now, this is really very difficult for us to watch, but we're staying with them and we are watching them for a very specific purpose, because we need to report back to those people who are the authorities in the area. We need to report back the progression of this particular problem with the Nkuhumas. Now, just to warn you, and those of you will know it, it's very difficult to watch, and I promise you it is very difficult for us as well. We cannot help but to become incredibly attached to this particular pride of lions, and it is never nice to see animals in pain and suffering. But I have to tell you that I doubt, and in fact it will probably be the approach, because this is a natural disease, there will not be any intervention. We do, however, need to track the progress of disease so that we can report, and so that these findings can be used in the future in terms of understanding the effect that this particular nutritional disorder has on wild lions, because there's very, very little information available to us. And that's one of the big reasons why we're staying with and monitoring these lions. I thought about that, Gen B, and thank you for sending through that question. I thought about the exact same thing. I was wondering about it, and I don't have the answer for you, but Gen B's question is, could it be that the Nkuhumas have actually been too successful with the buffalo, and if perhaps they had included other animals in their diet, maybe they would not be faced with this particular nutritional problem? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Perhaps if they had focused on kudu, for example, that are adapted to browse and therefore have survived a little bit better through the drought. Zebra, I'm not so sure about. I mean, the zebra are also bulk grazers in the same way buffalo are. We've seen the buffalo looking very thin. We've seen them browsing, which is unusual, but they are supplementing their diet a great deal with leaves, which their digestive systems are not really adapted to cope with. Jen, I don't know. The thought had occurred to me, the fact that they have only targeted buffalo. Could that be? I really don't know. I'm not sure. Don't have the answer to that. Here comes the lioness. She went off to investigate because the vultures were descending upon the second carcass, so she went to chase them off. I just want to watch her for a little bit longer. She's one of the few of the adult females that we've seen up, apart from the one that's really struggling. Come here, girl. Come a little bit more into the open, please. I just want to watch the position of her back. The posture is very indicative of this particular, what they strongly suspect the problem to be. And in fact, as I said, for those of you who perhaps missed the start of the sunrise safari, the initial autopsy results indicate that it is what they've suspected all along, which is white muscle disease. Now, one of the defining symptoms before the animals actually lose the control of their back legs is a tucked-in posture, with the tail down and a sort of the back is actually struggling to stay straight. So they get an almost submissive-like posture with their tail tucked down and their haunches sort of tucked under. They're still eating so well. That's what's astounding about that. That's, I think, why it's taken us so by surprise. I know. James agreed. James has raised another point that I've been thinking about, which is how incredibly quickly this particular problem has taken hold and how quickly it has affected the various lions. And you're wondering if perhaps it is more common than we realize, or perhaps we've just missed the symptoms. I don't think it's that common, James. Otherwise, we would know far more about it. There's evidence in captive lions in terms of vitamin deficiency, but a lot of that is vitamin A deficiencies rather than vitamin E deficiencies. I'm slightly flabbergasted. The cubs make total sense to me, but the fact that it has affected if it has affected the adult lionesses in the way that I think it has, and I have to be honest, I think it has. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. There's no point pretending it's something else when it's not. The fact that it's affected the adult lionesses as well, as quickly as it's affected the cubs, confuses me. But I'm not an expert. I'm not a vet. I'm not a scientist. I don't know that much about it and the biology behind it. There you go. So Michael, that is a question that has come through from Michael, and Michael's obviously been doing his research, saying that you thought it only affected young animals and not adults. Michael, it depends on the species that we're talking about, and the biggest problem, of course, is that we only have really information about domestic animals like cattle and goats and sheep. However, there is evidence that it affects adult horses, from what I've read, and it's entirely possible that it runs a different progression in predators. Predators are a completely different ball game. They're a completely different biological design, a completely different digestive system. So it's entirely possible that it does affect the adult lions as well. We just didn't know about it. We're trying to stick purely with the facts and purely with what we know, and avoiding all kinds of any elaboration or guessing on the facts. I'm just telling you exactly what it is I've observed. I think it's too much of a coincidence that both lionesses are walking stiffly. Looking to see if I can find amber eyes. I want to just try and figure this out. If only so that we can provide information for the future. And they're eating so well. The number of times that I wish I could take back the sentence about the fact that the drought is going to benefit the predators, which it has in a way. But we spoke so much about that at the beginning, the fact that there would be a predator boom, that they would be successful, and they have been incredibly successful. They have not been without food, but this was a completely unexpected side effect of the drought. And it makes me wonder, I really think that there is something to Gen B's idea about the fact that the lions have only been eating buffalo. Because the leopards are absolutely fine of this area. They're feeding off things like duiker and impala, mixed feeders that have access to slightly better nutrition. But then lions are much bigger as well. They need things in far higher quantities than something like a leopard. Hey, little cub. So hard to believe that a month ago we were watching these perfectly healthy little cubs play with each other. My eyes automatically drawn to any of the adult lionesses that actually stand up. She looks okay. Tail flicking. Denise, a very natural question that you've asked, and Denise wants to know whether there will be any kind of intervention for animals with an illness. No, not if the illness is of natural cause. And I know that is a very difficult thing for some to understand, and it's a very difficult thing for all of us, because of course our natural desire is to want to help. However, these animals are completely wild. They're in an open, natural, wild system, and nature has her ways. Nature does things and balances things in a way that we might not necessarily understand, but that makes complete sense to her. Bear in mind, if the population of lions were to spike, we would immediately see a drop in population of other predators like cheetah, leopard, hyena, wild dog. There is a very, very delicate balance out here, and nature has her ways of maintaining it. Denise, that would be a completely different thing, completely different story, if it were anthropogenic. In other words, if it were introduced or caused by human beings in some way. She's fine, I think. She looks fine to me, the way that she's walking. So that's good. That is good news. So Denise, if it were canine distemper, then yes, absolutely, there would be immediate intervention. And one of the big reasons why people acted in order to test the cubs was because we didn't know exactly what the problem with those particular lions were, or these particular lions were. Hey, little cub. All done. Looking good. Well done, little cub. So no, there will be no intervention if it is a natural cause, which it is, from what the evidence suggests, it is natural cause, and therefore no, there will be no intervention. It would be a very different story in different parts of Africa. It would be a very different story if populations of lions were not in areas where lions are endangered. In South Africa, we're very fortunate in that our lion population is healthy and thriving. And I understand that it is difficult and it is very hard sometimes to understand, but it is the case. And it's the decision that is made by those who have spent many, many, many years working and studying and building off the knowledge of generations of conservationists. She's fine. She's absolutely fine. One other thing that you'll notice when we're in sightings such as this, well, I personally am giving the Nkuhuma lionesses, oh, little one. So much noise. So much noise. It's very easy to imagine that it's a cub objecting to a morning bath, which of course is not what that is. It's begging sounds, but that was so sweet. Sorry, let me just finish my sentence that I started earlier. One of the things that you'll notice is we're giving the lions a bit of extra space. She's come to us now and moved close to the vehicle, but when we move in, we're giving them as much space as possible, because although our Nkuhumas are incredibly comfortable with us around, if they are struggling to move, if they are struggling to get up, we don't want to make them feel threatened in any way. They're going to feel more and more vulnerable as this goes on. And the same applies for when we're walking as well, avoiding the areas completely. Right, well, speaking about walking, of course, Tayla is on foot. Let us go and see what she's found.
So we've got this beautiful creature here. Now, I've described it as beautiful, but another word I suppose you could use is ferocious. This is a robber fly. And as the name suggests, they are extremely good ambush predators. Well, at the moment, though, it doesn't look like it's ambushing anything. I think it's really just sitting and relaxing on this bushman's grape. But they'll typically fly around and capture their prey. Now, David, can you see the bristles on their legs?
Yeah.
Can you see how they've got lots of little bristles there? Now, those are there that once the robber fly has come across and swept and grabbed its, oh Herbert, you've got something else, I'll have a look at that now, has caught its prey mid-air, those bristles will actually help anchor whatever it may be, whether it's a grasshopper or a dragonfly, which is just some of their favorite foods, and it will be able to hold on to it nice and tight. And now it's got another adaptation. You can see it's got those beautiful big eyes. Now it needs to try and protect them in some way. So if you look around the front of their face, you should see some more short bristles. Now that's called the mystax, and it's actually a derivative of a Greek word which means mustache. And it is suspected that those bristles are very much sort of in the same way as eyelashes are to us as humans and of course the animals. It helps protect their eyes and of course their proboscis. Now as this thing flies around and looks for something to eat and captures its prey, it doesn't just have to hold on to it, it's got another weapon. And what it does, it's got a very sharp proboscis, so its mouth part. It'll stab the prey once it's grabbed hold of it and inject a neurotoxin and a proteolytic enzyme which helps digest whatever insect it may have caught its insides. And after a couple of minutes, well, it's able then to drink its breakfast. Isn't that incredible? How beautiful is that? Now, we've got something else down here. I need to go right down to the ground. Come and have a look here. David, this is going to require you to go right down, but it's quite special.
What is it?
Can you see that? Look here. Can you see it, David?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it looks like it's a crab spider. I'm going to just point above it over there. The little white thing that you can see, that looks very much like a crab spider. And then you can see it's caught a locust of some sort. Well, it might be that crested locust that we see so often, but it looks like a small one. Now, just looking at that, you'd think, my goodness, how on earth is such a small spider taking down a grasshopper? But it's got an entire trap set up here. Its web is beautiful. Now, of course, I'm not 100% certain if it is a crab spider. There's so many different ones. But just from the coloration and the general appearance, it looks as though it could be. And you can see that it's struggling a little bit, the grasshopper. So I think it got tangled up in the web, which would have triggered the spider to come out of its hiding place. And very much like the robber flies injects a venom into its prey, so does the spider. I'm not sure what venom the spider has. It's nothing really significant for us as humans. We wouldn't be affected by it. But probably something along the lines of a neurotoxin. And you can see that that little locust is slowly starting to slip in towards dreamland. And very much the same thing as a robber fly. It'll also have some proteolytic enzymes that'll help digest the insides. Hello Lucian, who's a new viewer. Welcome. It's great to have you here. Now, well, you've asked how long can I lay on the ground before I get annoyed by the bugs. We'll see, because I'll probably jump up in a bit of a flash and let off a bit of a girly scream as well. I can feel a couple of ants crawling around. They've gone underneath my shirt. But that's not too bad, and they're on my sleeve. Don't take me away. I need to finish a bushwalk today. Hopefully they don't inconvenience us. But this is just amazing, so thank you, Herbert, for spotting it. I did see something moving, but from where I was, it really just looked like a curled up leaf. And that's what's so incredible about these bushwalks, is that once you get down onto the ground and have a look at a different level, it's just amazing what you can see. There are so many ants moving around here too. And I think that once the spider is finished with this ant, so that's really just waiting for the insect to digest from the inside, and then it will, very much like the robber fly, as I said, it will sort of suck its prey out, and then the ants will utilize what's left of this little locust. They will take the legs back, they will take the outside, sort of all the little bits of it, the head, the antenna, legs, take it all back to their burrow, which I presume they've got somewhere underneath the sand, seeing as though there's so many moving around. But that is just really incredible. Now, I don't think that the spider is actually going to wrap it in silk. I think that it's got itself stuck by its back legs. You can see it's caught on the web over there. Oh, sorry, I moved it. It didn't seem to bother that spider too much though. And I'm sure it won't be too long, maybe a couple more minutes before that locust sort of stops wiggling around. Wonderful. Now I need to get up now. You're going to see how dirty I am. Try and do that gracefully. This is what happens. You just do the little wiggle, and then most of the sand falls off anyway. Right, let's carry on. Now, Sarah from Georgia, you were wondering if we get anything like lightning bugs. Now, not sure what a lightning bug is, but we get glowworms, which is maybe something similar. When it's not even a worm, in fact, it's actually a beetle. Now, maybe it's the same thing. They have a chemical reaction that they have in their abdomen, which releases a couple of bright colored lights, and maybe that's what you're talking about. But I haven't seen any of them just yet. Perhaps when we move into summer a little bit more, we shall see them. Herbie, we're going around. Let's go around. Now, Herbie's the master. He was doing loops and loops and of course directing us to the best pathway. Now, David, just be careful of all this. So I don't want David to get hurt either. David, I'll take the thorns for you.
Thanks, Tayla.
What have you seen, Herbie? Do you want to go to the termite mound? We're going towards the termite mound. Now, we're going to see what else we can find. Oh, we've got to go through a little bit of a thicket here. But we'll catch up with you in just a moment. Let's go back across to Jamie.
We don't have to move off too far. We've got an amazing view of Nkuhuma, whose face, as I said, is looking 10 times better. In fact, it's almost completely healed up. He's been watching the cubs go past with a relatively tolerant air. The one that was getting the bath earlier walked past making such a fuss. Hello. Hi, Dad. And then off it goes. The one that earlier was making such a fuss, going... Eventually Nkuhuma looked up at it and just gave the biggest sigh I think I've ever heard him give, almost as if to say, all right, I'm up. I'm awake. What do you want? It's been fantastic to see this particular side of the Birmingham boys with their cubs. Going from aggressors to the dominant male lions and then to fathers of this particular set of cubs. And it's been really truly enjoyable to watch them interact with them. We've got a whole load of little cubs sort of spread out around me. The cub that walked off with, that was having the bath and was making all of that noise, seems to be walking absolutely fine. And I just want to clarify that we're still not certain at all whether or not the adult lionesses are showing signs of the same problem. I personally think they are. But we haven't got any confirmation. The one lioness who's really clearly struggling to walk has got an old injury, and it could be that. So we don't know for certain, which is one of the big reasons why I've wanted to sit here for as long as possible, just to watch. And I'm keeping track of each and every lioness. The one that went and lay down there that's struggling to move, she hasn't moved at all. But that could be an injury. So we're just not certain yet. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to actually get footage of them moving and to send that through to the people who are in the know so that they can understand and give their own expert opinion. Oh, I'm sure that buffalo face was complete a moment ago. That was rapid. She must have peeled, sorry, I know it's a bit gory, but she must have peeled back the skin so quickly. I haven't really been watching what's happening over there. Nibbling away, one cub determined, hasn't left that carcass at all. Determined to get the most out of it. I don't know how much is left on the second carcass. I haven't been across in that direction. I said earlier that the lioness went and chased the vultures away, but she doesn't seem terribly committed to it. Hello, little ones. You have got so big. Now that you're up next to the vehicle, it's very easy to see. Positively massive. Oh, big yawn. Hello, little one. Michael, you'd like us to try and determine how many male and female cubs are left. I am one of the things that I am doing is trying to work that out. At least one of the middle sets of female cubs is fine. It looks like all three older cubs are here. Oh, that's okay. If you're stopping to relieve yourself, that's fine. All three older cubs are present. It seems to be the youngest three that have been affected, which includes the one cub, of course, that was incredibly noticeable due to one very floppy ear, Tayla's favorite little lion cub. All three young ones are missing. From what I can tell, the remaining ones are the older set and the middle set of cubs, which would mean, what would that would be 1 male and 4 females, unless I've forgotten exactly what the breakdown was, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the oldest cubs was a male and the rest female, and then the 2 middle cubs were females as well. So Michael, that's what I think, sort of on a preliminary assessment, I think that is what we have remaining. And that makes sense, doesn't it? It makes complete sense that the younger set of cubs would be the first to be compromised by this particular disease or this particular deficiency because they're younger. They haven't had as much access to the milk. They aren't as resilient. They aren't as strong. It makes total sense that something that's going to affect the lions would start with the youngest and most vulnerable members of the pride. So it looks like it's the 3 that are, we know 2 of them already are dead. The third has not been confirmed, but it basically has been. We know, essentially. Although, we had the 5th surprise member come and join us this morning. We can still hold out hope. Shame, little ones. I know it is hard, but I'm going to stay here for as long as possible. I've explained why and what it is we're trying to achieve while we're sitting here. So while we watch the various adults move about, let's go back across to James and the royal family.
Well, not much has played out here, everybody, but it is just such a very special thing to sit with these things on a Saturday morning, enjoying the sight of Shongile having her breakfast, and Hosana down below, very well-mannered. They are. I was just saying how well-mannered I think they are. Jean-Andre said, of course they are. They've been beautifully brought up. Well, they have, of course. Karula, completely polite, of course, unless she gets very irritated, in which case she's not very polite. She gets very cross. You see a wonderful image there of her little spot pattern. Carlos, you're a new viewer. Thank you for your question. Well, great to have you on Safari. I hope you'll join us for an extended period. You say, why don't they attack us? Well, Carlos, because they've got something else to eat that tastes much better than we do. I'm obviously being very facetious. That's not why they don't attack us. They don't attack us because they don't see us as predators here, or they don't see us as prey. Now, normally a leopard or a lion will see a human being as a predator. That's when we're on foot. But when we're in a car like this, what you find is that they don't perceive us in the same way. Now, we're not entirely sure why that is. Some people will tell you it's because when we don't stand up, they just don't recognize us for human beings. Some people will say that they just see the whole vehicle as a sort of organism on its own. I'm not convinced that either of those are necessarily correct, but the point is, Carlos, they do not see us in the vehicles as a threat. And because they don't see us as a threat, they don't run away. But likewise, they don't see us as something good to eat, and so they don't attack us. Now, you can get too close to an animal like this, and then they might become afraid of you, and when they become afraid of you, then it is possible that they would try and attack. But it's very, very unusual. On foot, it's a very different situation, Carlos. So you've seen Tayla out on foot today. She's walking around the place. If she was to walk into this area, what would probably happen is that there are 2 leopards on the ground, obviously, and one in the tree. The one in the tree would almost certainly come out of the tree and melt off into the bush. The mother would probably growl at Tayla on foot, and the other one on the ground, the little son, he would disappear also into the bush. Now, Carlos, the reason they do that is because they see us as a threat. They would never attack her just straight off unless she cornered them. Because they see her as a predator, they would try and get away from her. If you ever get into a position where you happen to corner an animal, where it feels like it cannot move away, it cannot run away, then it might attack. But that would be very unlikely out here. There are, of course, many incidents of leopards and lions attacking human beings, but normally that's either at night, or especially in the case of leopards, the leopard is sick or injured and really doesn't see any other option other than to attack a human being, and again, normally at night. I know this is a little bit disgusting perhaps for some of you, but of course it's just so wonderful watching these leopards acting and learning and growing up. So that was a young duiker. Not a young duiker, in fact, probably an adult male. You can see he's got a fairly good set of horns there, which didn't do him much good in the face of an attack from Karula, the Great Queen. And it's a beautiful morning. It's quiet, a very gentle kind of dawn chorus. Michael, you're wondering about the size of Hosana there, and he's just at the bottom of the tree, and you're wondering when he will be the same size as his mum. I think probably about a year old, as you suggest. I think a year old will probably see him about the same size as her. She is in there somewhere. And we're not going to try and move from here, everyone, because we just don't have any signal other than where we are right now. And for those of you who are new viewers, like Carlos, that means that, of course, we are broadcasting from a fairly difficult area. There's not a lot in the way of technology around here. And there's the Queen. And so there are a couple of technical difficulties that we have to deal with here. One of those is that we're very low down, and that means it's just a little bit difficult sometimes to get a good signal. So we're going to stay here with this picture of the two lovely leopards with their mum sitting off in the bush. And I suspect that eventually he will lose patience down where he is and head up to the tree and see if he can't convince his sister to give him something. Now I want to suggest something about their names. For those of you who know their names, Shongile, of course, is a female name, which means beautiful, and Hosana is a male leopard, and his name means little chief. Now I want to put it to you, everybody, that's it's a really, I don't know, how do I put this in a subtle way? I think it speaks volumes of our own human society, the way we've named them, which I think is quite interesting, that we've always named female leopards after beauty of some kind, or, well, in Karula's case it was peace, but often female animals described as beautiful or magnificent or pretty or flower. We've got one of a leopardess called Flower somewhere around here, Shiluva. And the males always described, or often described, in terms of strength and power. And he is described as Little Chief, of course, but he's no less beautiful than she is. I just think that's quite interesting. Now, Dr. Summit, you're wondering about, I've forgotten what you were wondering now. I'm going to get your question back again.
How do we tell the difference between
how do we tell the difference between the leopards? Thank you, Dr. Summit. You're a new viewer. Wonderful to have you with us. The way you tell... Well, there are any number of ways of doing it, and various... Oh dear, I've got a big beeping in my ear. There are any number of ways of doing it, and some of our viewers do it in different ways from the way I do it, and that's absolutely fine. But every leopard has unique spots, and a leopard, as we know, Jean-Andre, from the legend, doesn't change its...
rosettes.
Spots, yes, well done. He's got bilharzia brain, he can't think straight. And the easiest way to do it is, well, for me, and it's not always for everybody, is to look at the spots just below the whisker line, above the whisker line, below the nose. And if you look, in fact, we can probably, obviously she's now turned her head, but if Shongile, on her left-hand side, she's got 4 spots, one of them very small in the front, and on her right-hand side, she's got 5, one very small in the front, and then 4 behind that. Then Hosana, I think, is 3-3 as far as I can remember, unless he's got an extra little one. I'm pretty sure he's 3-3. And his mother is 3-4. So she's got 3 on her right, our left, when she's looking at you, and then 4 on the other side. But you can look at the necklace around their necks. They've often got a very distinctive patterning where if you can imagine a necklace of jewels, there's a necklace in the front on the chest of every leopard, and that's a unique spot pattern that's quite easy to look at. And then the most obvious thing about Karula, and this was pointed out by many of our long-term viewers, is the fact that she has something called a spot pattern wow written across her forehead. So she's got the front of her forehead has got a very distinct row of spots that spells out the word wow. So that's the way that we recognize her very easily. Right, Tayla is out on foot, like I say, so Carlos, go and find out from her why she's not being attacked. She is, in fact, with a terrifying predator.
We have found a burrow of a baboon spider. And well, as you can see the legs of the baboon spider inside its little tunnel. Now, this happened as we turned over a big log. We discovered it. Now, I'm not one to dig one out, but that's just my personal opinion, so we're just going to have a look at it like that. I've probably given it a fright as I've removed the lid off of its house, being, of course, the log, but I shall pop it back on. And David, I've actually got another spider. Have a look at this one. This one's easier to see. Can you see it there? Just want to move out the way a little bit so I can get a better look. This is incredible how...
Can you just point to it again?
I will. There it is. You see it?
Yeah.
It's so small and it's living inside this log, which has obviously been hollowed out, and I think the termites have been taking good care of it and helping it decompose. And of course then it's opened up all these little crevices. Now, it's not just this little spider that's utilizing this. We've obviously seen the big baboon spider that's using it as, the roof of its house, really. Oh, I thought that was something. And you can see all the webbing around here. And it seems as though this little spider, this particular spider, has caught lots of ants. You can see bits of exoskeleton from the ants all around. It's quite difficult. And then this little... Look at this. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. I'm going to put it in the palm of my hand. Can you see that there? Little exoskeletons of a spider. Now, I wonder if it's perhaps not from the spider that we've just looked at. The reason why I say this is because there's a whole lot of them in various sizes, or maybe that's a female spider and she's had some eggs and they've hatched and lived around here with her, and now they've gone off and moved on to find their own home of their own. Isn't that incredible? Now, one more thing that we also found, David. Should we have a look at that exoskeleton down here? Look at that one. Now that needs absolutely no introduction. I'm just going to try and wiggle it around a little bit, just so we can get a better view. There we go. Now that is from a scorpion, also the exoskeleton. And I believe, from what it looks like, it probably is an olivaceous, so the olive bark scorpion, just looking at the size. And it takes about 11 sheds of a scorpion's exoskeleton before it reaches its adult size. Now, I don't know what number that was, because the olivaceous scorpions aren't particularly large. How do your legs feel after that, David? It's like we're doing squats up and down every now and then. I'm going to move out of here. But isn't that just incredible? We've turned over one log, which I'm going to turn back over now, and we've just found two different spiders. We found the exoskeleton of a scorpion, and of course a lot of little exoskeletons of some spider, whether they belong to the one we just saw, maybe it was the babies of that. Let me put the roof back over. Now, I need to be quite gentle when I do this, because I don't want to destroy the entrance. There we go. That's perfect. And it was a great spot, because you probably find little lizards and things and beetles coming close to the entrance of that baboon spider. And well, they probably won't even realize that it's there as it sits quietly, gets stuck on the web on the inside that it's lined its hole with, keep it nice and dry and waterproof. It gets stuck there, wiggle around in a panic, and out that baboon spider will come, grab its prey, bite onto it, inject it with venom, very much like we've seen with the robber fly and the other spider that we saw, and take it down into its burrow. Let's carry on. Let's see what else is out and about here. Oh, Herbie. Now, James, you were wondering, what are my must-haves for guiding a bushwalk? A stick, firstly, because I talk a lot with my hands, so if I have a stick in my hands, it normally keeps me focused. So typically when I've done walks, I normally am carrying the rifle. So then I can't have a stick, because I can't have a stick and a rifle. So I'll have my rifle, but it's nice because it keeps my hands busy, and then I don't use them too much. Even now as I say this, I'm talking with them quite a bit. Water, very important, and extra water. So I've got a couple of bottles in my bag. Sunscreen. And just a very basic first aid kit. You don't need to go out with an entire trauma kit, because you've got a radio. You can get hold of somebody if something, in the unlikely situation that something happens. But just basic things, from a rehydrate to some electrolytes, in case somebody's feeling a bit weak and not well, little snack bars. Because you won't believe, when you go out in summer and you're walking at 12 o'clock, people that are not used to the sun, so if anybody coming from the UK perhaps, and they've just come from winter and they come to South Africa in the sun, it's a real shock to the system. Then you have to, obviously I always do it, make sure, I pretty much used to give my guests an ultimatum. I'd say to them, you can come on a walk, but you've got to promise me that when you get back you drink these electrolytes. And it would used to work, because you don't want to ruin your holiday and get heat stroke or something silly like that. What else? Leatherman knife, something like that, to cut things, and it's always handy. A lighter, or like Steph often has, he's got a flint stick, that's very important to have. A torch, a flashlight, Gotta have one of those. And for me, that's really it, and a good pair of shoes. And I suppose, David, what do you think of insect repellent? No, David's tough. I always douse myself. Now, there's something that I did want to show you, and I'll probably show you a little bit later. I'm feeling a bit congested today, and I'm going to show you how incredible elephant dung is, but I'll do that later. Now, our bird,